Hello there friends and welcome. In this video I'm going to talk about my long-awaited Lich guide for Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous, focusing on both Lich abilities and spells and also a few build choices. Lich is certainly one of the strongest mythic paths in the whole game. You have extremely powerful spells as a merged Lich, both offensive spells and also buffing spells, much like Angel really. Not only that, but it is very easy to make a Lich character that is capable of both melee and also spellcasting. Just look at all the damage we can do with just a single attack, and that's outside of a critical hit. The enemy just explodes really. Look at that. A 330 critical hit, and all of these secondary hits also come from our very powerful Lich buffs that are stacked to our weapon damage on every single hit. Spells like Fist of Blood and Negative Eruption basically allow you to trivialize most of the game content even on unfair by just spamming them again and again against the enemies. You even gain a very powerful scaling undead companion that you can customize in a few different ways. So let's get started, first with Lich powers and mythic abilities. Alright, so first we have the Mythic Ascension ability, the Lich themed one being Danse Macabre. It's a decent enough ability that basically gives channel negative energy to your Lich character. Now don't expect to get a lot of use from this early on. It takes a while until you can turn your party members into undead with the aid of a Lich buff, or get enough undead companions that is. Alright, so at Mythic Rank 3 you will at last get your first Lich abilities. Of course, if you are playing a full arcane caster, you will want to merge your spellbook. This is simply insane and one of the main reasons why both Lich and Angel are top tier mythic paths. We also get to choose our skeleton champion. He works basically as an animal companion, meaning he does not take a party slot and you can actually equip him with gear. However, you cannot customize his feat selection, which is automatic depending on the class you choose for him. My favorite one is Skeletal Marksman. As the name implies, this is basically the ranged skeleton, who gets a lot of ranged feats, especially bow themed ones. The main reason I prefer the Skeleton Marksman is that early game, basically during chapter 3, you won't really have many ways of healing your undead companion, so it helps to have your skeleton attack from range. This way he won't really be getting hit during battle. Not to mention, most of my party members tend to be melee, and I don't want my front lines getting too crowded. Now we have access to our first Lich power. This choice is very important because we only get another Lich power at Mythic Rank 6, basically dozens of hours after this selection. There are some powerful abilities here, but a lot of them are rather useless, at least in my opinion. In the end, the best Lich powers for me would be Fear Control, Weapon of Death, and also Deadly Magic. So let us talk about each of them. The first one is Deadly Magic. It will allow your spells to ignore spell resistance and also spell immunity. Frankly, this part isn't really that good. As a merged Lich, you will mostly be spamming the very powerful Lich mythic spells, and they all ignore spell resistance and spell immunity by default, so there's not much of a point to it really. The second part can actually be very useful, but overall I'd say there's not much of a point in picking this ability early, as the most dangerous spellcasting enemies only come late game. Not to mention the fact you can get Deadly Magic for free just by having your own phylactery late game starting at Mythic Rank 8. The second is Death of Elements. Basically lets you turn any elemental damage into negative energy. It also has a secondary use that makes all elemental damage you receive also become negative energy, meaning it's going to heal you. Overall, I find this ability rather useless. There's not much of a point in turning your elemental damage into negative energy. Your Lich spells, the ones you will be spamming as usual, already bypass enemy immunities. And as far as receiving negative energy to heal yourself, there are much better ways of healing yourself than this. Now this does actually have synergy with the Genie kind spell and also the Firebrand spell. Not to mention any weapon enchantments your weapon might have, but even then, I don't think this is especially useful. Not as your first Lich power ability, that is. There are much better choices. So now we have Death Rush, another ability that's very situational and I don't find it very useful as well. Whenever you use a combat maneuver, so basically trip, disarm or sunder armor, the enemy will suffer 1d6 points of damage per your mythic rank. Because of how niche it is, honestly just skip it. We have another very niche ability called Decaying Touch. The effects basically help you make natural attacks, but honestly, I don't see a Lich character playing a shapeshifter build. You have much better ways of dealing damage to the enemy. Another Lich power is Eclipse Chill. For 3 rounds, creatures will have to pass a Fortitude saving throw, or become blinded, and also suffer cold damage that scales based on your mythic rank, not to mention becoming vulnerable, and this is very good as they will take 50% more damage from both cold and negative energy. The main problem with this Lich power is that it offers a save. Honestly, we don't really want to rely on abilities that have saving throws, especially if you're playing on hard or unfair, as enemies starting from mid to late game tend to have quite a lot of saving throws. Now this is when things start getting really good. Fear Control is one of the most powerful Lich powers really. It's capable of giving your Lich character a +4 profane bonus to attack rolls, and also a +1 profane bonus to damage rolls per mythic rank against creatures that are either frightened or under mind affecting effects. This also is going to give you a passive fear aura that you attempt to shaken enemies. I am not sure if this ability is bugged at the moment, but it seems that you get the main effects, so the bonus to attack rolls and damage, even without facing shaken enemies, so it's overall very powerful. Not only that, but because merged liches have very fast spellcasting progression, they will soon be able to cast the very powerful Frightful Aspect spell that will instantly shaken all enemies nearby you with no save at all. Overall, this is one of the top tier Lich picks really, and is actually the one I recommend you pick first. So we now have Indestructible Bones. It has a neat effect of giving your Lich impenetrable 10 damage reduction against physical damage, and also giving the enemy a minor debuff whenever they attack you. I mean, it's a neat ability and all, but not really needed. As a Lich we have many ways of making ourselves immune to quite a lot of stuff, not to mention a lot of sources of powerful healing and temporary hit points, so I don't see much of a point to this ability. Now we have Magic Devourer. It's going to give your Lich quite a lot of spell resistance, and also has a secondary effect of quickening your spell or ability whenever the enemy fails to overcome your spell resistance. I also believe this ability is somewhat situational. You can already give your character a lot of spell resistance just by casting the divine spell called, well, spell resistance really. While it is not a bad ability at all, there are better choices, and like I said before, we have a limited number of choices, so picking the best ones early is the way to go. Alright, so Negative Energy Mastery is a very unique Lich power that only works for kineticists and also alchemists, allowing both their bombs and blasts to do additional negative energy damage based on Lich Mythic Rank, and also inflict a stacking negative level upon the target. This is certainly a solid choice, but once again only if you are playing a kineticist or an alchemist. Now we have Tainted Sneak Attack. First it's going to increase your sneak attack damage by 1d6, which is great, and it does have a somewhat powerful main effect of attempting to turn the enemy vulnerable against both weapon and elemental damage. The main problem is that, just like the Eclipse 2 ability, it offers a save. Undead Mount is somewhat useless. We can achieve most of this by just casting the Lich unique spell called Blessing of Unlife, so skip it. Now Weapon of Death is another very powerful Lich ability, especially if you want your Lich character to attack both with melee or ranged weapons. It's going to add the Living Bane ability to any weapon you are wielding. Living Bane is very powerful, as it grants the weapon an extra 2d6 irresistible damage against basically all living targets, and demons are living targets. The secondary effect is somewhat useful as well, but not really the main benefit. Lastly, we have the Withering Life Lich power. It does have a very powerful effect, especially when you consider you can combine this with, let's say, Quickened Magic Missiles for quite a lot of ability damage per round. But the main issue with this ability is that pretty much all the bosses in the game, at least the important bosses, are immune to ability damage, so there's not much of a point to it really. Alright, so overall, I would definitely choose either Fear Control or Weapon of Death as your Lich Mythic 3 power. Personally, I prefer to go with Fear Control early on, because of how useful the bonus is. Now at Mythic Rank 4, we get our first upgrade to our Skeleton Companion. Overall, my favorite one is Skeletal Fighter. I can't pick this ability now because of a bug with Lich Respect really, but if you're playing a Lich for the first time, be sure to pick it. By default, our Skeleton has medium base attack bonus, but with this upgrade, he's going to get high base attack bonus, the same as classes like Fighter, who have a base attack bonus equal to their hit dice. This is sure to highly increase the attack bonus of our Skeleton Archer. We also get the highly powerful Lore Beyond the Grave passive. This is going to increase the strength, dexterity, and also charisma of all undead companions, and eventually our main character once he becomes a full Lich, equal to half your Mythic Rank plus 1. At Mythic Rank 5, your Lich will gain the very powerful Dark Rites ability. This will give you a permanent aura that enhances the caster level of all your spells and also your ally spells by 2 levels. Overall it is very powerful, not only for increasing damage but also increasing the duration of your spells. And Lich, just like Angel, is one of the very few mythic paths that can actually eventually turn even spells that last 1 round per level into 24 hours duration. Very powerful. Now at Mythic Rank 6, so around chapter 4, we also get our second Lich power, so the choice should be between either Deadly Magic for the ability to shut enemy spellcasting down, and at Mythic Rank 6 we will be at chapter 4 when we start getting a lot of annoying demons that like to spam spells, or the Weapon of Death ability to increase your damaging melee even further through the aid of the Bane Living ability. Now at Mythic Rank 8 we get our final Skeleton Companion upgrade. I like to go with Skeleton Cleric as it's, well, basically going to add a full Cleric spellbook to our skeleton, not to mention the channel negative energy as well, so it can be very powerful at high levels. At Mythic Rank 9 we get our final Lich power. It can be anything you want really. I'll go with Indestructible Bombs just to make our Lich character tankier. But like I said before, you can pick something else, like even Tainted Sneak Attack for example. Alright, so let us talk now about the very powerful Lich unique spells. Liches are renowned spellcasters in most settings, so it stands to reason their spells in Wrath of the Righteous would be amazing, and they are. You get good spells as a Merged Lich starting from as early as level 3. The main one here is Power from Death. With this buff you will gain a +1 to attack rolls, saving throws and damage rolls for every dead creature around you up to a maximum of 3 + 1 per 5 caster levels. So basically a maximum of 8 or 9, depending on how many dead creatures are close to you really. Not only that, but if the bonus is higher than 3, which is very easy, you also gain the benefits of the haste spell. Now this spell states that it only lasts 1 round per level, but I have found it actually lasts a lot more at 1 minute per caster level, which is way better. Because of the numerous untyped buffs you get from this spell, it is very solid. You should always have this on without a doubt. At level 3 we also have Corrupted Blood. This spell can be, well, useful, but personally I'm not a fan of using it because it's going to spread the condition to all creatures surrounding the target creature, including our party members, and I don't really enjoy the friendly fire part of this spell. We also have Mastery of Flesh, which is very useful as it is a unique spell that can work both ways. That is, it can either damage the enemy or also heal your characters. The damage doesn't offer a save and does untyped damage, which is very powerful, and as for the heal, it can heal both living and undead characters, so overall very useful. Now as far as level 4 Lich spells, the main one is without a doubt Vampiric Blade. This spell is absolutely insane. It will enchant your weapon to do an additional untyped damage of 1d6 plus caster level, and this is huge really, because as a Lich you can eventually gain up to 30 caster level, so that's a lot of staple damage you are adding on every single one of your hits. And it doesn't just end there really, because the weapon will also become vampiric, so it's going to heal you for the same amount of damage you inflict. Consume Undead is a spell that can be useful, but it's only really going to matter when facing undead, as it's going to do 1d8 damage per caster level while also healing you for the same amount. It can be useful against certain enemies like the very annoying ghosts you face during chapter 3. Eyes of the Bodak, well, it's somewhat of a misleading spell really. Draining the enemy of levels per round with an aura sounds very useful on paper. The sad part about the spell is that sometimes it will also hit non-playable characters, which can be annoying as it's going to kill them, meaning it can block you from doing certain quests. Not only that, but as soon as you become a full Lich, this spell will stop working for some reason. Now level 5 Lich spells are also very powerful. You actually get a lot of them. Deny Death, for example, is one of the best buffs in the game, a very unique spell that can actually prevent death on any character you cast it upon. The way this spell works is that it will basically paralyze the target in place and remove them from battle until battle ends. Whatever damage the character takes after that will not kill them. It's especially useful on the main character because after all it is a game over if you die. The duration is also amazing at 10 minutes per caster level. and we can easily turn this into 24 hours. Exsanguinate is the first powerful Lich offensive spell. It's going to deal 1d6 untyped damage per caster level, and like all Lich spells, it automatically bypasses any spell resistance or immunity the enemy might have really. It does have a secondary effect of draining strength from the enemy if they fail a save, but frankly this doesn't really matter. The best part about the spell is the no save, irresistible damage. It's perfect for using with meta magic rods, such as the very useful Devouring Lust rod you can get as soon as chapter 3. Now it doesn't stop there, because at level 5 we also get the infamous Repurpose spell. Repurpose is an absolute amazing spell that will let you enslave quite a lot of powerful, unique enemies even, and make them fight on your side, such as the infamous Koramza the Baylor, and of course the Dread of Avakia Vanguard. Basically, when you cast this spell on an enemy, if you kill them during the right amount of time, which is rather generous at 1 round per 2 caster levels, the enemy is going to be revived as your undead slave. What this means is they will permanently follow you through the same map area. Be sure to loot the enemy of anything important you might want before battle ends, otherwise you will be blocked from getting the enemy loot. There are no words really to say how powerful this spell is. First, it scales quite wonderfully with difficulty, as on Unfair you will be getting access to extremely powerful enemies with great boosts to both class levels, abilities, and so on because of the difficulty increase. Not only that, but it is the only way of getting access to some enemies such as the very powerful mythic demons that can cast mythic spells of their own. But personally, I prefer to enslave both melee and ranged enemies, as they don't rely so much on enemy artificial intelligence. After all they have to do is attack. You can actually even enslave certain bosses, like the Umbral Dragon during chapter 4, completely trivializing the end battle with Baphomet, as the dragon will pretty much be able to solo the battle for you really. So be sure to keep an eye on enemies with unique names, as they are prime targets for this spell. Another unique part about this spell is that there is no limit really, you can have as many undead slaves as you want. Now level 6 Lich spells are mostly about defensive power. First we have Bone Shield, capable of giving you a +6 shield bonus to armor class, which is good as the normal shield spell only gives a +4. Not only that, but also immunity to critical hits, which is crazy really. We also have False Grace, another extremely powerful defensive buff. This spell will work on every single one of your allies and grant them a massive amount of temporary hit points, up to 3d10 plus your cast level. You can keep casting this as many times as you want to refresh the temporary hit points loss, meaning you will always have basically an energy shield that always drains some of the enemy's damage for you. Now at level 7 Lich spells, things get even crazier. First we have the extremely powerful Fist of Blood offensive spell. This is basically the same as Exsanguinate, except it is an area of effect version of that spell, so basically 1d6 irresistible no save damage per caster level to all enemies in a rather big area. Just like an angel will spam Bolt of Justice and Storm of Justice, a Lich is most likely going to spam both Exsanguinate and also Fist of Blood. Now at level 7 we also have Blessing of Unlife, without a doubt one of the most powerful buffs in the whole game. This spell will grant any of your allies, pets included, all of the undead immunities. Basically, the most important one being immunity to mind affecting, so immunity against fear, shaken, hold, paralyze, stun, dominate, and so on. But also negative energy affinity, meaning all your characters will be able to heal from your very powerful Lich spells, such as Negative Eruption and even the Harm spell that clerics get, or the Channel Negative Energy ability. The duration is extremely high as well, and frankly for a Lich character you will want to have every single one of your non-undead party members warded by this buff at all times. This is also one of the reasons that you don't really need to use the undead companions as a Lich, as you can simply turn all of the story characters into undead, for gameplay purposes at least. Now we also have the Restore Undead spell, which can be somewhat useful, as it's going to heal all of your allied undead to full hit points. Combine this with Blessing of Unlife and it's basically a massive heal that you can cast many times. Now level 8 Lich spells are for once somewhat disappointing. Domain of the Hungry Flesh is kinda annoying to use really, because just like the pit spells, it has friendly fire and chances are your characters will end up going inside the pit. Not to mention it deals somewhat low damage. Embrace Death is another disappointing spell because it offers a save, and frankly, why bother with spells that have saving throws when you can simply use the powerful Lich spells that don't offer a save at all. Honestly, the best use I have for level 8 spells as a Lich is to cast Fist of Blood, the level 7 spell I mentioned before, either heightened or bolstered. This way you get even more casts of Fist of Blood for massive, irresistible, no save, area of effect damage. Thankfully, at level 9, Lich spells get amazing again. The main one here is Negative Eruption. This spell is basically a mass version of the Harm spell. It is actually misleading though, because as you can see here, it says the maximum damage is 150. In reality, the damage is uncapped, and basically is going to deal 10 points of damage per caster level. So as a Lich, up to 300 damage at 30 caster level. This spell is great for two reasons basically. First, it's going to heavily damage enemies, up to 300 damage. It does have a save, sure, but even 150 damage is still very powerful. Not to mention the fact you can empower these with metamagic rods for even higher damage. Second, it's going to instantly heal all of your party members, undead and living allies with the Blessing of On Life buff by the same amount, so crazy really. Third, it's even going to give a buff to those same characters, meaning a +2 bonus to attack rolls, damage rolls, will saving throws, and last but not least, twice your caster level as temporary hit points. So basically, it's an extremely stacked spell with many useful effects. The second most useful level 9 Lich spell is the Deadly Corrupt Magic. It's basically an improved version of Greater Dispel Magic. And because Liches do have high caster level, you will be able to dispel most enemy buffs, even bosses. Not only that, but for every single effect you dispel, the enemy will be debuffed with a -1 penalty to attack, damage, saving throws and armor class. For the late game bosses that have basically dozens of effects on them, casting this spell alone is a way to ensure they will get heavily debuffed and most probably die from it. Now we also have Flay for Purpose at level 9. It's basically an upgraded version of Repurpose. Frankly, it's somewhat useless. There's no really a reason to use this instead of just casting Repurpose. Now Liches, just like Angels, are also the only other Mythic Path that gets access to level 10 spells. Personally, as far as Lich, I find them somewhat disappointing. The Angel level 10 spells are certainly better. We have Doom to Servitude, which once again, just like Flay for Purpose, is an upgraded version of the Repurpose spell. But once again, the effect is not really that much over it because it offers a save. Now, Absolute Death is the main attraction here. First, it can actually instant kill the enemy if they fail a will save. On hard and on fair, this is not going to happen unless you really debuff the enemy. However, even if the enemy passes the save, they are still going to take a massive amount of irresistible damage per caster level. This is what makes this the best level 10 spell, the fact that it works both ways. Lastly, we have Pit of Despair, which is basically an upgraded version of Domains of the Hungry Flesh. It's a pit spell, so not one of my favorites. I suppose the good part about it is that it deals negative energy damage, so your undead characters will be healed by it. But even then, because of the very limited amount of spell uses we have for level 10 Lich spells, just stick with Absolute Death really. Right, so let us talk about Lich builds now. I'll be covering 3 different Lich builds: Sylvan Sorcerer, Exploiter Wizard, and also Brown Fur Lich. Right, so the first build you can go as a Lich is 10 Exploiter Wizard and 10 Eldritch Knight. Exploiter Wizard is somewhat similar to Arcanist in that they can get arcane exploits as they level. Not to mention that they can also increase either their caster level or difficulty class of their spells by a +1 or +2 with the potent magic exploit, which you will of course get as soon as level 1. The build is frankly quite similar to my Brown Fur one, so starting out as an Exploiter Wizard, I went for Martial Weapons Proficiency, Spell Focus Conjuration, and as a bonus wizard feat, Greater Spell Focus Conjuration. If you are respecting your character instead of starting the game with him, you don't really need to pick the Spell Focus Conjuration line, as starting from the mid game we will be mostly spamming the powerful Lich spells instead of Grease and Glitter Dust. Now at level 3 I went for Shake It Off. Level 5, Combat Reflexes, and we also have an Exploiter Wizard bonus feat. In this case I chose Bolster spell. Starting from level 6 onwards, we can actually enter into the Eldritch Knight Prestige class, and that is what we'll level until around level 15. At level 6 we get our first bonus Eldritch Knight feat, which went into Seize the Moment. At level 7, Outflank. At level 9, Improved Initiative. At level 10 we have another Eldritch Knight feat, Weapon Focus. In my case I went with Falchion. Level 11, Improved Critical Falchion. Level 13, Spell Focus Necromancy. Level 15, Greater Spell Focus Necromancy. You don't necessarily have to pick the Necromancy focus line, because the best Lich spells don't have a saving throw for the best effects really, which is damage. Level 15 we have our last Eldritch Knight bonus feat, Greater Weapon Focus Falchion. Level 17 Weapon Specialization Falchion. Level 19 I picked Power Attack just to show you that you can still get a very high attack bonus even with Power Attack on. Now the mythic progression is the same as my Brown Fur basically. First you want Abundant Casting, then improve at Abundant Casting at Mythic Rank 2, at Mythic Rank 3 Enduring Spells, Mythic Rank 4 Greater Abundant Casting, Rank 5 Greater Enduring Spells. Now from level 6 onwards, the choices are a bit more personal and you can customize your character the way you see fit. I went with a heavier melee focus, so Improved Critical Falchion at Mythic Rank 6, Elemental Barrage at rank 7. Around this level we will be able to extend our Genie Kind ability to 24 hours. Rank 8 Mythic Power Attack, Rank 9 Archmage Armor. You can choose something else other than Archmage Armor, as you don't really need the increase in armor class, you won't be tanking as a Lich. My Lich powers are basically the same as always: Fear Control, Weapon of Death and Deadly Magic. You can switch Deadly Magic and Weapon of Death, depending on if you want to shut enemy spellcasting down, especially during Chapter 4, through Deadly Magic. Now the main advantage of a Wizard Lich instead of an Arcanist Lich is that as a Wizard you have quite a lot of spell slots during each spell level, especially when considering the Abundant Casting mythic ability. There are certain spells that you only want to cast a single time before rest, Heroic Invocation for example, or other buffs that will last long enough, like Sea Mantle and Bone Shield. So basically, the advantages of an Exploiter Wizard Eldritch Knight Lich over a Brown Fur Arcanist Lich is that first you have faster spellcasting progression of around 1 level. You can also enter into Eldritch Knight earlier, at level 6 instead of just level 10 with Brown Fur. Not only that, but a lot more spell slots per level. Now as a Lich character you can also go with Brown Fur Transmuter and then Eldritch Knight. This build is extremely similar to my Brown Fur Arcanist generic build that I posted in a video some time ago, so you can actually follow that same feat selection. The difference being, in this case you can also pick something like Spell Focus Necromancy and Greater Spell Focus Necromancy, as we are going to be casting Lich spells, which are mostly of the Necromancy spell school. Another very useful feat you can get is Bolster Spell to increase the power of the spells I just mentioned, such as Negative Eruption and Feast of Blood. Besides that, the build is the same really. Another difference is that in this case I went with Falchion instead of Fauchard, but the weapon choice is up to you. Both of these weapons have amazing critical range, ending with a 15 to 20. The only difference really is that Fauchards have higher reach, but because Lich has extreme survivability from all the buffs and healing effects, I don't find reach as needed. Once again, the feats are mostly the same: martial weapons, combat reflexes, improved initiative, seize the moment, and outflank to complete our melee feats that highly increase attacks of opportunity. I actually also picked Heightened Spell here, but that was a mistake, so feel free to ignore it. Now the only problem with this build is that, well, there's two problems really. First, you won't be able to guess level 10 spells, at least in my case. You can only get them at Mythic Rank 10, so at extreme late game. It doesn't really matter that much, because as you have already seen from my Lich spell guide, the level 10 Lich spells aren't really that special, the best one being Absolute Death, but you can certainly make do without it. Another problem with Arcanist Lich is that, well, we have quite a limited amount of slots per spell level, so 3 slots at level 9, 3 at level 8, 3 at level 7, 3 at level 6, and then 4 at the other levels. Arcanists are special casters in that they actually have to prepare spells, much like wizards. However, they can cast these spells prepared as if they were spontaneous spells. The main issue with Arcanist Lich is that you have to share these very limited slots with both the buffs that you are going to use with your Arcanist, such as the size buffs, the animal buffs, and so on, to empower them with both powerful change and shared transmutation ability. And of course you also have to slot your Lich spells in these same limited slots, so you will probably end up with less spells than you might want per level. It doesn't make that much of a difference, because at the end, as far as Lich spells for example, you are mostly going to be spamming Feast of Blood, Exsanguinate, and Negative Eruption and so on, whereas most of the Arcanist buffs are low level spells like the Animal buffs, Animal Growth. Now the main advantages of Brown Fur Lich are of course both the powerful change and share transmutation abilities, as I have already explained in my Brown Fur video. With these abilities, you will be able to provide the ultimate spell support to your party members. Now let us talk about another Lich build possibility, in this case a Sylvan Sorcerer Lich. Once again, the feat selection is pretty much the same as with my Brown Fur Lich and Exploiter Wizard Lich really. So martial weapon proficiency, spell focus, conjuration, shake it off, combat reflexes, seize the moment, outflank, bolster spell, the spell focus necromancy line, improved critical, and I also picked power attack once again just to show that even as a low base attack bonus character, you can still achieve quite a lot of attack bonus and decent damage. Now Sylvan Sorcerer also gets some special bloodline feats, which we can use for example for improved initiative, dodge, and also lightning reflexes. The main advantages of a Sylvan Sorcerer Lich instead of Exploiter Wizard or Brown Fur is that, well, first we have access to an extremely strong pet that remains useful from the very early game into the late game, only becoming stronger and stronger with each level. So as a Sylvan Sorcerer, you will be able to fully benefit from Charisma, both for spellcasting purposes, and this matters because at the late game, your Lord Beyond the Grave buff will apply twice to your Charisma, so you will end up with something like 55 Charisma, which is rather massive. And also highly increase your hit points from being undead. Just look here, we have almost 600 hit points just as a sorcerer really. Meanwhile, with my other two builds, I have around 400 and something. Besides that, sorcerers are spontaneous casters, so all of the Lich spells will be added for free to your spells known list, meaning you will always be able to cast all of your Lich spells and also all the spells you have learned by yourself, so very versatile. The main disadvantage would be that, well, you have somewhat lower melee capabilities. After all, you won't be able to get the Eldritch Knight feats to increase your weapon power. Even then, because you still have an extremely powerful pet, it kinda compensates for that. You have 5 less base attack bonus than Exploiter Wizard and Brown Fur, and also 1 less attack per round. Alright, so let us talk about Lich Gear now. Amulet, well, the most important one is without a doubt Valexia's Magnifying Amulet, because of the high bonus to your natural armor class, and of course the stacking bonus to your highest ability score. In my case intelligence, but if you are a Sylvan Sorcerer Lich, it's going to be charisma. As for armor, I like to go with Haramakis with my full casters, as this does not hamper spellcasting, still lets you benefit from your maximum dexterity bonus to armor class, and even gives 1 to armor class really, not to mention other useful effects like +4 to all saving throws. Now when it comes to your robes, you certainly want the Robe of Determination, because it's going to increase the difficulty class of spells that target Fortitude by a +2, meaning spells like Exsanguinate and Feast of Blood. Your belt can be anything really, depending on your stats. You can choose something like Display of Power, for example, to increase your strength by +6, and also give you a passive aura that will instantly reduce the will saving throws of all enemies by -2 without a save. The glove slot can be anything really. I like going with increases to skills, but you can also choose something like the Fencer's Gift gloves if you want to increase your damage when either dual wielding or two-handing weapons. Although in this case I prefer to leave it for fighters and so on. Your boots can also be anything as well. Now your braces slot is most likely going to be your phylactery late game. Before that you can use the luck braces that you start the game with. As for rings, I like to go with the Ring of Evasion, so if you are successful on a reflex saving throw we don't take any damage from a spell, and also the Ring of Luck to increase our saving throws even further. Now the cloak slot is a given really. During the early game you certainly want Cloaks of Resistance to increase your saving throws, but during chapter 4 you will be able to craft this very special Lich Cloak that empowers your Lord Beyond the Grave ability to give your allies an additional +4 bonus to strength, dexterity and charisma, so it is extremely powerful. Look at my strength here, I have 9 points just from Lords Beyond the Grave. Your headband slot is also pretty easy. You certainly want any headbands that increase your primary mental stats, so intelligence for Arcanist and Wizard, and charisma for sorcerers. As far as your quick slots, the items of note are the same as with my Angel one really. A greater quicken metamagic rod, so you can spam 2 casts of Fist of Blood in the same round, or Negative Eruption. The Grandmaster's Rod, of course, to both empower and maximize your spells. And in the case of Lich, you can also use a greater Empower Rod. That's because the very powerful Negative Eruption spell can only be empowered. After all, it already deals 10 points of damage per caster level, so there's no point in maximizing it, as there is no variable damage roll involved. Well, so this was it everyone. I hope you've enjoyed this guide on how to properly build your Lich. It was quite long, so I was not able to talk about the undead Lich companions and builds for them. In case you want me to talk about this, such as how to build Stalton, Delamere, Castleglier, and so on, please be sure to comment down below. Also, if you think I missed something of note and what you would have done differently when building your own Lich. Thank you for watching, friends. Please remember to support the channel by subscribing if you can, and see you again next time.